Good evening. My name is Steve Kaufman. I'm an engine company captain with the Ventura County Fire Department, and I serve as the Public Information Officer for CAL FIRE Incident Management Team 4. We are coming to you live from the Silver Dollar Fairgrounds in Chico. This is the North Complex Fire, and this is the news conference on this 16th day of September 2020, 6:01 p.m. I just want to remind you that we are streaming live on the CAL FIRE Butte County Facebook page, on the Butte County Sheriff's Facebook page, and on the U.S. Forest Service Plumas National Forest Facebook page. And like we told you last night, we currently have captions added to the live press conference. We've talked about every night there's a PowerPoint presentation or a slideshow before and after each press conference, and it has all the current location of our information boards throughout the fire. So I encourage you to watch that before or after the press conference, and you can see all those locations, the ones currently in your community. I also want to just remind you of our tiny URL. If you're interested in damage inspection, those inspections are done a number of times throughout the day. They'll inspect a number of properties, then they'll upload the properties, and about 3 or 4 times a day that occurs. If you want to look at the most current information, it's going to be tinyurl.com/Y3JMZXNJ. And when you do log on to that site, remember that only the properties that have been inspected are currently on that site. So if you type in your address and it doesn't come up, it's because that property hasn't been inspected yet. Let's go right to the numbers. Our current damage inspection numbers for today. Damaged residential structures, 31. Destroyed residential structures, 635. Damaged commercial structures, 5. Destroyed commercial structures, 49. Damaged other structures, 27. Destroyed other structures, 299. Grand total of damaged structures, 63. Grand total of destroyed structures, 983. Now for our numbers statewide. There are currently over 17,000 firefighters battling wildfires all over the state of California. They're staffing more than 2,200 fire engines, more than 334 fire crews, over 328 dozers, and over 396 water tenders. Those firefighters are currently working on 29 major fires or complexes around the state of California, and there have been more than 29 new initial attack fires within the last 24 hours. To date, since August 15th, over 3.3 million acres have burned. Our current numbers for the North Complex West Zone, 77,671 acres, 30% contained. Total acres for the North Complex in its entirety, 273,335 acres, 36% contained. Now we'll hear a current operational update from both of our operations section chiefs.
Good evening. Jake Cagle, Operations Section Chief for California Incident Management Team 4. We are responsible for the north and the south zones. We're going to start here at Sly Creek Reservoir on the north shore. From the north shore all the way to the north shore of Continuing from the north shore of Little Grass Valley Reservoir, everything remains in its current footprint. We've gone direct and utilized the road systems. We continue to mop up in this area. No major concern for us in here. The infrastructure of Little Grass Valley Reservoir as well as the town of LaPorte, there is no current threat. We do have lines in place, contingency lines in place. If something were to occur, we would pull back to structure protection and focus on that, as that is one of our priorities. Moving forward up to the Road 27, which ties into the Pacific Crest Trail. Everything in Onion Valley, we continue to get fire activity. We're just staying even with this. We don't want to overextend ourselves and put extreme amount of fire down, especially with the forecasted winds for tomorrow. We're expecting 38-mile-an-hour gusts in the afternoon as this front passes out of the southwest, out of this direction. So we will just continue to stay even with it, but we're not going to add any additional fire. The plan, once the wind subsides, are to bring it to the LaPorte Road. Up here, past Onions Valley, up over by Minerva Mine area and Wilson Gomez Mine area, we had a line in, and the fire continued to advance past that. We gave it our best effort. We had to disengage from that area, and currently right now we are picking up this ridge system, which is fingerboard ridge system, and taking it in. The line was already cut out of Middle Fork of the Feather River, and we're just finishing that last little piece to tie it into the LaPorte Road. The plan is to utilize LaPorte Road until it ties in to Pacific Crest Trail. So we'll have this all fired in once the winds subside. The activity up here as well in Wilson Gomez, it's active, the wind is on it, but we don't expect a big push tonight. From where you see the black line, from the Middle Fork all the way around close to Sloat to Lee Summit, all the way over to East Quincy, everything remains in its current footprint, no issues. Moving to the west, no issues through Claremont Peak over to Bottle Springs and into Lookout Rock, no issues there. Everything remains in its current footprint. Coming over into this road system, which is the 54X road system just south of Bucks Lake. We continue to work this area. However, we are overextended in this area, and what I mean by that is our resources. We are managing 198,000 acres with about 1,400 people. So we're trying to do our best to provide the oversight in our values at risk, which are the communities of Bucks Lake, as well as Haskins, Highlands, Meadows Valley, and Tollgate, and then also on the south end of the infrastructure of LaPorte, as well as Little Grass Valley Reservoir. So those are our priorities, so we have to focus on that. So we continue to get spots, and the way it works is we're getting spots, we're getting around those spots, and then we continue to get spots over here. We have an old burn scar from 1999, the Bucks Fire. That is a very receptive fuel bed, a lot of down fuel in there, so we have to continue to go up in that area. So we're trying to hold this 54X road, which goes into this 71 Yankee Road, and then over to Oro-Quincy Road. We continue to get spots over the Oro-Quincy Road in some areas. Anywhere, the largest right now is 12 acres, and we're getting around it, but it's just slow going. We have a lot of assistance with a aerial device. It's a drone that has infrared imagery on it, so that's helping us in here because the brush is about 8 foot tall, so we can't see the spots. So about 11, 12 o'clock every day, we get that imagery, and that's helping us. Our furthest spots that we're getting are a mile, mile and a half. So we have resources around this infrastructure. We have structure engines that have already prepped all of Bucks Lake, Haskins, and Highlands. We've done structure prep in there. We've mitigated the fuels around there. We have hose lines around there. So we are prepared if something were to come up there, but our focus is try to mitigate these spots so we don't have to go into that structure protection mode. We're hoping once the winds subside after tomorrow, we're going to get a temperature drop, and we're going to get a relative humidity increase. So that's going to assist us. So that's going to help us. We have a thing called probability of ignition. So that probability of ignition is at 90. So what that means is out of 10 ember casts that go over, 9 are going to take. So when we get into this weather, once we get past this weather pattern, it's going to be looking a lot more favorable for us, a lot lower receptive bed. Continuing here at Four Trees, going down, starting west, we made some really good progress. This is in the campfire scar and it looks really good through there. There's a couple hot areas, but we got equipment around it. We moved south of Coyote Creek area, and we're continuing, and the plan is to tie in at the North Fork of the Feather River. And basically that would tie us in with our counterparts here in CAL FIRE. End of report.
Good evening, Ron Bravo, Deputy Ops, CAL FIRE Incident Management Team 4. Thank you, Jake. So to kind of take off where he left off, we'll talk about some of the work that we've done on our contingency branch, which was to the north of Highway 70. We basically took off from the Jarbo Gap Station and Highway 70, worked our way up to Flea Valley, all the way to Dixie with both secondary and contingency lines that are now in place and ready to go if in case we need those. However, as we discussed previously, this area in here that was just discussed is holding, and it does not appear to be a threat, and we don't have any anticipated weather events that would indicate otherwise. So we're very comfortable with our contingency plan that we have in place. Moving into Branch 25, a lot of good effort has been put in place here on Big Bend. Their primary line is holding, and we continue to strengthen that line, getting additional depth with mop-up. We anticipate this will be looking good over the next 2 days, but we don't have any concerns with Big Bend at this point. All our lines are in and looking real well. Jumping down into Bloomer Lookout and Bloomer Mountain, all that area is still holding, looking really well, continuing to depthen our mop-up, and is going really well. Moving all the way down into the Foreman Creek area, all our lines are in, holding, no additional issues there. This also allowed us the opportunity to continue to tighten up and finish our contingency work on Division R, which is in Cherokee. That is being completed today and will be done by this evening. Moving on down to the Bidwell Bar Bridge and the Stringtown Mountain. All that area has been tied in and is complete. No additional fire growth anticipated here. Moving on up the South Fork of the Feather River all the way up to the Ponderosa Reservoir. Line is held for several days. No additional fire growth will be anticipated there. After the reservoir, we moved east up the drainage. We ran into what we call Division Delta and Charlie. In that location, we have a lot of challenges, which I expressed the night before. It's in an area that has not seen fire in over 100 years. Very heavy fuels, very steep terrain, and we've had challenging winds in there. We had an increased activity last night that pushed the fire down slope, made a hard run this morning up till about 11 o'clock. We got a change in wind directions. It pushed against our other primary lines. Fortunately, over the last couple days, we've been able to put in secondary lines as well as contingency lines, basically on the downhill or south between Clipper Mills and the bottom drainage. So the drainage is specifically Lost Creek drainage. We have a line across Lost Creek drainage all the way back and ties back into the South Fork of the Feather River. It's going to take some time for us to try to piece this together, and like we've mentioned before, there is a lot of challenges we're going to face. With those challenges, there's been multiple questions about the communities that we're concerned with. For example, starting in Robinson Mill to Forbstown to Challenge to Clipper Mills to Strawberry Valley. All those drainages in and around Lost Creek feed back up to the top where LaPorte Road drives in. It doesn't matter the county because we have it interlaces between Butte County and Yuba County. We've worked closely with both sheriff's departments to ensure that the message is very clear. If we have concerns with that area, which we do, there is an evacuation order for those areas that encompass both those counties. So if you live in Forbstown or Clipper Mills or Strawberry Valley and you're under an evacuation order, it's directly related to the fire activity that's happening in the lower fork or the South Fork of the Feather River. This is going to be a challenge, and I want to reiterate that with you guys. I've said it multiple times. We're not out of the woods yet, and it's going to be a time before we are because it is so dense and steep in there. I also want to go back and touch upon a little bit about the damage that has taken place over the last week from the initial push of this fire. We talked about Brush Creek, talked about Berry Creek and Feather Falls. All these communities have sustained substantial infrastructure damage, substantial structure to homes, outbuildings, and it's going to take a lot of time for both us as an agency to be able to ensure that fire risk has been mitigated and there will be no additional fire growth, as well as it's going to take time for all our cooperating agencies from the county and from the utility companies to render that safe for folks to get back in there. So if you have any concerns or questions about where you live, please go to that URL app and look at where the damage assessment teams are working. That will give you an idea of what they've been faced with. This is a very big uphill battle to get to. Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Dan Borsum, the incident meteorologist assigned to the firefighting effort. Today was a smokier day. The satellite imagery that we utilized to monitor the weather showed that the smoke came all the way around the Great Basin back into California from the south, along with the fires that we had going on throughout the state. So a lot of the smoke that we saw today was high level. What did that do to our weather? Well, it helped keep the temperatures a couple degrees cooler than we expected and the humidity just a little bit higher. We launched another weather balloon from the Incident Command Post here in Chico to help us get a really good understanding of what the atmosphere looks like from here to 30,000 feet up over Butte County. One thing we've learned is that there are multiple layers where there's warm air aloft which resist the air moving up and down through the atmosphere. That's why in the valley floor we've seen relatively still winds, yet at some of the mountain peak tops around 8,000 feet, we're seeing stronger winds, which is certainly moving the smoke columns. So while it may sound like that the description of the weather has been very similar for 2 days, this pattern is going to get disrupted tomorrow. There is a cold front that's going to move through the area on Thursday. I want to stress, number one, as I have in previous nights, this is a west to east moving cold front. This wind direction is completely different as a result, as opposed to what happened on September 8th, which was a north to south moving cold front. Now, what does this mean? It's going to mean different things for different elevations on the fire. Below 4,000 feet, we're going to see things be very similar to previous days in terms of temperature and humidity, a little bit cooler, a little bit more humidity, and the winds are going to be aligning in similar directions as they have as previous days, which is a southwest wind in the afternoons. It's just going to be stronger. So below 4,000 feet, in general, you're going to see your winds in the southwest gusting 14 to 18 in the afternoon. Now, when you start getting up to the northeast side of this fire, there are elevations that are 6,000 to 7,000 feet above sea level. And those locations are going to be prone to the 30, 35 mile an hour winds that were mentioned. So just be aware that this is a large footprint for a fire and the weather is varied greatly across it. Now, when I use the word cold front, that's an important thing because it does represent change. And while we're not expecting the changes to be overly dramatic with this front, they're significant enough for us to be concerned. So what we're going to be doing tomorrow is monitoring the weather very closely to make sure the firefighters are aware of any changes so your firefighters are kept safe. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Jonathan Pangburn. I'm the Unit Forester for CAL FIRE San Benito Monterey Unit, and I serve as the Fire Behavior Analyst for Incident Management Team 4. Fire activity overall in the West Zone was reduced today, although you heard from our Operations Section Chief Ron Bravo the update about the area of Lost Creek Reservoir and Bear Gulch, where we have continued to see growth and the fire resisting control. As a reminder, that is because it's in a forested area. Some of it is new regrowth areas, and the rest of it is a forested area with heavy understory brush that lends itself to carrying flames into the tops of trees. So it is a very difficult area. Tying that in with what you just heard from our meteorologist, Dan Borsum, is the temperature gradients that exist at different elevations, or altitudes I should say, in the atmosphere that has resisted some of the vertical movement. Some of that is going to be breaking down with the cold front that is going to be coming through, which will allow a little bit more vertical movement. That's a term we refer to as stability, or in this case, instability. Slightly more instability lends itself to a little bit more plume development. So the weather is a bit of a mixed bag tomorrow. While we have some higher winds and more instability, we also have higher humidity, which reduces that spotting potential and the ability for the fire to carry. So it's a little bit of a mix. In general, though, there is still great potential for the fire to remain active in the Lost Creek Reservoir area, and firefighters are going to remain vigilant and have a fair amount of work cut out for them there. As you heard earlier as well from our partners in the North Zone, the greatest areas of activity are in the south of the Bucks Lake area, as well as near Little Grass Valley. So just as a quick reminder, the wind direction coming from the south or from the southwest will push the smoke toward the north and to the northeast, which means it will bring the smoke away from the foothill communities, continuing to drive it higher up in elevation and closer to the Great Basin. Thank you.
Okay, over the last couple days, there have been a number of questions specifically asking about FEMA and when FEMA was going to be in the area. So today I spoke with one of the FEMA public information officers, and we are going to present to you a recorded video from this public information officer on how you can start your application process with FEMA prior to the claims teams getting into town, which should be later this week.
Good evening. My name is Troy York, and I am a FEMA media field representative. It's my job to ensure that information concerning all the programs that FEMA has to offer gets out to the citizenry via the media process. Butte County was added into this declaration on Sunday, and that addition means that the much needed aid for those who lost so much during this catastrophe have been approved for federal assistance. This is relating to individual assistance and households, as well as debris removal. FEMA, in coordination with the state and local officials, as well as the media, will be endeavoring to get the word out to the citizens of Butte County and encouraging them to register with FEMA online in order to start the recovery process. They may do so by contacting online the website at www.disasterassistance.gov, or they can go and download the FEMA app on their phone, smartphone, or tablet, or by calling 1-800-621-3362. This will enable them to get the registration process started. These processes sometimes take a while to come to fruition, but this registration initiates that process, and you will be given a registration number which you want to keep hold of and use in any ongoing contact with FEMA. So I'm happy to be here. I will be here personally for the next few weeks and working with the media and with your local and state officials. Thanks.
Okay, so that number will be on the slideshow. So if you watch that slideshow before or after our presentation, you can get all that information. And right before we leave at the end of the press conference, I will give you all that information one more time verbally. Now for a message from our sheriff.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Corey Honey. I'm the sheriff of Butte County, and I'm here to give you our update with regard to our response to the North Complex West Zone fire, also known as the Bear Fire. There are no changes tonight to any evacuation orders or evacuation warnings. I would like to remind everyone again that a map of the areas that remain under evacuation orders and warnings can be found by visiting www.buttecounty.net/sheriff. you go to the current evacuation maps, click on that link, and then you can go and look at those maps. In addition to that, there's a full list of evacuation orders and warnings available on our website. Click on the link that says current evacuation information. Now, we realize that not everyone has access to the internet or computer right now. As I told you yesterday, today we opened a call center for people who do not have internet access and therefore aren't able to access those web pages to look at the maps. We are answering calls as fast as we possibly can, and we'd ask that you have patience as we work to try to increase our staffing levels to be able to accommodate the very high volume of calls that we're receiving. As I told you last night, that is being staffed by the CERT team, and we had 3 volunteers working at night. We're working on getting more of them in there to assist with that in the coming days. If your calls are not answered on the first try, we apologize, but we'd ask that you be patient and keep trying. And remember, starting tomorrow, the call center that will allow you to ask questions about evacuation orders and warnings will be open from 9 a.m. to 7 p.m. The number, again, is area code 530-552-3010. I would also like to remind you again that this is not our dispatch center. This is a call center, again, being manned by volunteers. But as a side note, just to give you an understanding of what the call volume is in our dispatch center, in the last 8 days, our dispatch center has answered over 10,000 calls, which is a 50% increase over what they would normally do in a time like this. Now I'd like to talk with you about our ongoing effort to check the welfare of individuals or locate people who have been unaccounted for. To date, the Sheriff's Office has investigated 185 cases involving people who were initially unaccounted for. Only 1 individual remains unaccounted for as of this evening, and again, we're pursuing leads as to the whereabouts of that particular individual. I'm also relieved to report tonight that no additional human remains have been located, and as a result, the total number of people who we believe to have lost their lives in this campfire remains at 15. In addition to that, I have the ability tonight to identify 2 of the victims. First, a friend of a subject named Mark Delagardi, age 61, of Berry Creek, requested a welfare check at his residence on Bean Creek Road. Mr. Delagardi's friend was concerned because Mr. Delagardi ignored evacuation orders and chose to stay at his residence. On September 14th, detectives located the human remains at Mr. Delagardi's residence, and DNA ultimately confirmed that those were the remains of Mr. Delagardi. My condolences go to Mr. Delagardi's family. Second, on September 8th, 2020, Ken Lee, age 64, of Berry Creek, was at his residence located near Starcrest Lane in Berry Creek. At approximately 10 p.m., family members spoke with Mr. Lee via telephone. Mr. Lee told the family members that he was aware of the fire and that he would evacuate if flames became visible. On September 10th, human remains were located in the area of Starcrest Lane, and DNA analysis confirmed that they were the remains of Mr. Ken Lee. Mr. Lee's family expressed concern about his name being released to the public as they do not want to be contacted by the media. Mr. Lee's family understands that the death is a matter of public record, and as a result, we're required to release the name. However, they ask that their wishes be respected with regard to not being contacted by the media, and that they be allowed to grieve privately. And I too ask that their wishes be respected. My condolences go out to Mr. Lee's family. I'd like to now end my report with some updates on arrest and enforcement activity. Again, we are committed to protecting those areas that have been evacuated. 2 additional arrests were made since yesterday. Probation officers from the Shasta County Probation Department encountered 2 individuals in the evacuated area, Stephanie Neely, age 30, of Palermo, and Joseph Stanfield, age 60, also of Palermo. Were in the area of Lumpkin Road and Ponderosa Way. They apparently had re-entered or entered the evacuation area and were attempting to gain access to a marijuana garden. Stephanie was arrested for being in the evacuation zone when she wasn't supposed to be, and Joseph was arrested also for being in the evacuation zone when he wasn't supposed to be, but also for being in possession of drug paraphernalia and providing law enforcement with a false name. Last, I'd like to give you an update on an arrest that we made earlier this week. And I do this because I want you to understand that we don't just stop with the arrest. If there is further investigation that needs to be done, we will do it. So on September 13th, as I reported to you, Butte County Sheriff's deputy was on patrol in the area of Cherokee Road when he made contact with Frederick Moonyarts, age 49. After further investigation, it was determined that Moonyarts was involved in a burglary of a home that was in an area under an evacuation order. When detectives searched his residence, they found stolen property that was taken during that burglary. Detectives also determined that a credit card belonging to the victim of that burglary was taken during the burglary. Detectives conducted follow-up and determined that the stolen credit card had been used to purchase tools and construction supplies at Oroville Home Depot on September 12th. Detectives obtained video surveillance and determined that Sunshine Galvez, age 46, of Oroville, was the individual who used the stolen credit card at Home Depot. And I think we're going to be showing a picture of her in a moment. Detectives determined that Galvez is an associate of Frederick Moonyarts. BCSO has obtained a felony warrant for Galvez's arrest. We're asking, if you know where she is, to contact the Butte County Sheriff's Office at 538, area code 530-538-7322, or our Investigations Division at 530-538-7671. And Sunshine, if you're listening to this, I would recommend that you turn yourself in to the nearest law enforcement officer. That's the end of my report. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Jay Kurth. I'm the Incident Commander for California Interagency Incident Management Team 4. I'm in unified command with California Team 4, the Sheriff, and State Parks. And first off, I want to say my condolences to the families that truly found out that their loved ones have passed. I would like to also say thanks to Butte County Sheriff Honey. Prior to entering unified command and at the request of my team liaison officer, he sent one of his detectives up to embed directly with my team operations section chief. The intent was to plan, coordinate, and inform the immediate emergency notification and evacuation of an estimated 23,000 people. This close cooperation and direct communication pipeline enabled immediate notification of the fire movement and additional spot fires to jurisdictional and cooperating officers as they performed that evacuation. The original spot fire moved 20 miles beyond all of the predicted modeling that had been done on what we anticipated and what we thought was likely to occur from that. New spot fires out of that initial spot fire that were in advance of the primary progression were reported to be spotting distances 4 miles ahead of the fire front, and clusters of spot fires in an area were joining so rapidly that large areas were igniting at once and creating a very dangerous fire environment. The Butte County Sheriff's Office and all who helped execute their jurisdictional evacuation responsibilities are to be commended for their effort to evacuate all the affected communities and citizens. So In light of the weather that you heard earlier in the forecasted winds, I bring this up as a reminder of the seriousness surrounding evacuation requests. And I request that you please stay fully aware of your current situational awareness and whatever potential changes may come of that, because everybody is doing their best to watch out for your safety. Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Charlie Blankenheim, Assistant Chief of the Tuolumne Calaveras Unit and one of the Unified Commanders for this incident. So each night you hear us stand up here and talk, fire service and law enforcement stand up here and explain to you the things that we're doing to help protect your communities. One of the things that I'd like to talk about tonight is some of the other organizations that are behind the scenes that are making a huge difference in this incident. First, I'd like to talk about the California Conservation Corps. So here on this incident, we have 4 Type 1 hand crews and 1 Type 2 hand crew that are provided by the 3 Cs. Those crews consist of 15 Corps members and a CAL FIRE captain. They go out every day and do all of the hard work that Chief Bravo talks about, all those crazy canyons and steep places that we go out and do that work. They're out on the fire lines every day. Also in this incident, we have about 40 corpsmen that work here in camp. They provide labor and they do all kinds of tasks in camp, including running the supply. They hand out drinks at our hydration stations, and now in the world we live in, they perform the vital task of helping keep this place clean and sanitary, trying to keep everybody here, the 2,000 people that are living in this place, healthy, and for that we really appreciate them. Next group I want to talk about is the California Department of Corrections. So on this incident, CDCR has 52 hand crews here that consist of, each of those crews are Type 1 crews, and they consist of 12 to 15 inmates and a CAL FIRE captain. They drive in the CAL FIRE bus, and they go out and they do the exact same work. They're Type 1 crew. They're on the front lines every day. If you've been following some of the stories out of here, one of those crews was involved in a very heroic structure protection where they ended up burning up a bus and had to take shelter deployment. So we really appreciate that. Also on this incident, CDCR provides our kitchen staff. So we have a CAL FIRE mobile kitchen here that is staffed by inmates. There's 40 or 50 inmates over there, and since this fire started 8 days ago-ish, they've served over 20,000 meals to the firefighters on this incident. So again, we really appreciate everything that they provide. You hear us up here every night, you hear all of us talk about the cooperation between law enforcement and the fire service and how important it is that the Forest Service, CAL FIRE, and the sheriff cooperate and make sure that everything runs smooth. Again, there's several other agencies that are out on the front line working every day that we don't talk about. First, Caltrans and Butte County Public Works. They're out. They were in the burned area just a couple of days after the fire passed, cutting down trees, building guardrails, trying to make the road safe, trying to do the things that are going to be required to achieve Chief Bravo's, when he talked about getting it safe to get you guys back in. They're extremely important. Butte County Public Health, they went out and toured the burn area today. They're working doing water monitoring, air monitoring, and trying to do the things that are going to be required to make this place safe. PG&E and AT&T have a massive workforce out in the field. That, again, 2 or 3 days after this fire passed through, they were out there removing power lines, cutting down burn poles, removing trees, hazard trees from around their facilities and around the roads, and again, a vital service. Cal OES, working with the Butte County Sheriff, has brought in a USAR team and a search and rescue team, and they're doing search areas out in the burn area, trying to make sure everything is safe. And then last tonight, you heard FEMA talk. You heard the video from the FEMA guy. As this incident moves forward, the fire service is going to take a less and less important role as the firefight hopefully starts to wind down here in the next couple days or weeks. These other agencies are going to become the lead or become far more vital in making sure that you folks get back to your houses and that everything is safe. Thank you very much. Have a good night.
Okay, like we have every single night, we have a whole staff reviewing the comments as they're coming through. So I'll bring each function up one at a time they'll have a little 3x5 index cards. They'll read the questions and then they'll answer the question appropriately. But before we do that, I want to thank all the viewers that are proactively answering questions that they know organically online. That's one of the things that helps us the most. And then at the end of the news conference, if you don't feel that you got your question answered, I really encourage you to go back and rewatch the presentation to see if you actually just missed that part of the presentation. Why don't we'll start with our fire behavior analyst, and then they'll cycle through.
Good evening, Jonathan Pangburn, Fire Behavior Analyst with CAL FIRE Team 4. All right, so the first question that I'm going to tackle is how does Magalia and Sterling City stand for wind change tomorrow? So the wind is still going to be pushing really up the drainages and up to the higher elevations, kind of a south to southwest flow. So moving in this general direction. So as you see from the fire, where the fire is on the other side of the middle fork of the Feather River and Highway 70, that wind direction will definitely keep the fire moving away from the Sterling City and Magalia areas, which are in the Butte Creek drainage area. So again, just to reiterate, when we talk about fuel moisture and how critically dry the material is out there, this is how receptive the fuel is. And it has to do with the drought that we had. As you might recall, there was not a lot of rain this last end of winter and into the spring, and so the fuels have been critically dry. And then you add on the the heat wave that we saw on top of that drought, and our fuels are definitely quite explosive and primed for some massive fire growth. And so that is what gave firefighters the initial challenge, and is what is presenting the continuing challenges in the Bucks Lake, Little Grass Valley Reservoir, and Lost Creek Reservoir areas. Thank you.
It's Ron Bravo, Team 4 Operations. Okay, there's been several questions as it relates to the threat or the issues going on in and around between Forbestown, Clipper Mills, Strawberry Valley, and also including Mary Mountain Village, which is near Clipper Mills. One of the things I wanted to reiterate with you folks earlier is that there is a lot of work going on here. There's an active firefight going on, and it will be a challenge for several days. What that does for us is what you can see somewhat depicted on this map. We've identified the primary lines, which we're trying to still put in and go direct where we can. We also have alternative lines where we try to box the fire in, which we have put in, and then we also have contingencies farther out, all the way out to include doing improvement on LaPorte Road so that we know that we have that as a last chance effort if we need it. But prior to getting there, it has not yet crossed Lost Creek, but there is lines in place that we are looking to utilize. So part of those questions that came in involved all these three communities is about air support. You know that we've been struggling with the amount of smoke that's in our valleys and our foothills. It has smoked in many of our air attack bases where we have our fixed wing aircraft, which includes the air tankers that drop retardant, as well as our rotor wing helicopters. They haven't been able to get off the ground and land safely because of the density of the smoke. So we'll still be challenged to do that. We did have a short window again today, but not a very big one, so we weren't able to do a lot of work with aircraft. Hopefully over the next day or so we may see a change and we'll be able to utilize those aircraft to support us. And finally, in closing, just please be cognizant of where you're at. If you live in any of these communities and you're in Yuba County, please take a look at where the evacuation zones are. The same goes for Butte County, because you've heard some devastating stories about people that wanted to wait until they saw the flame front. Well, a lot of times that's too late. And that's why we always err on the side of safety and ensuring that we have enough added time built in so that people can leave when there's an order given. If you're waiting to see a flaming front, it may be too late. We've continued to coordinate with our folks, like I said earlier. We continue to evaluate where the fire is at. We have decision points that we will reiterate when an order needs to be given. And many of you living in these upper areas along LaPorte Road are currently under an evacuation order. So please, please be prepared. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Aaron Wright with California State Parks. the question we had was, why is the lake closed to people who need to maintain their houseboats? So the lake is going to be closed as long as it's not safe for the public. All portions of the lake right now are currently under evacuation order or warning areas. So just tonight, we found power lines in one of the South Forks that hadn't been seen since. So until it's safe, we will not be opening the park. Additionally, most of the park is already being utilized to help with suppression and repair activities. We did understand the issue with the houseboat maintenance, and this morning a press release came out, which you can find at our website, www.parks.ca.gov, which allows houseboat owners to have access to their houseboats from 8 to 4:30 starting Friday. They'll have to use the shuttle service from the marinas, but the houseboat owners, we do appreciate they need to get to check on their houseboats, and they can ride the shuttles to get out there. They will not be allowed to, nobody is allowed in the park after hours.
Good evening. My name is Barbara Drake. I'm the Deputy Forest Supervisor for the Plumas National Forest and the Agency Administrator for the Forest Service portion of the fire. The question that came to us from the public tonight is, when will the forest reopen? So the forest closure for recreation has been extended, and we're assessing that every day. When the threat to the public diminishes, we will open the forest based on the individual forests and the threats they're facing due to the fires.
I got one additional question from the community that I wanted to take an opportunity to answer. And then along with that, just provide another update that I didn't provide during my initial presentation. So the question was, what is the status of the drone map? If you remember, I talked about having the assistance of the Alameda County Sheriff's Office to come in, fly the area that is impacted by the fire with the drone, and create a map that will be available to members of the public so that they can look at the map and search on their property to determine what happened or what the status of the property is. I am pleased to report that a lot of progress is being made, I'm hoping that we'll be able to have that up and running and available to the public by early next week. In addition to that, the escort program that we talked about, we're working on getting sufficient law enforcement staff to staff that program, also hoping to have that up and running early next week. And then finally, we've talked about our efforts to be able to open up locations, and that's going to take time because of the fire, because of trees being down, utilities and things like that. That's moving along, but there's another element to that which involves the use of our urban search and rescue team week and weekend, and we have search and rescue teams coming in tomorrow to start that process. But that has taken a little bit of time because some of these areas, as
and Meadows Valley and Tollgate, will it be similar to what was experienced at Berry Creek and Brush Creek? An evaluation point on the 18 road. So what that does is it strikes up a conversation as to when we would go into mandatory evacuation for Meadows as well as Tollgate area. So we've had those discussions. We have resources in that specific area, and we do not expect that to happen. Again, we have resources in place, hose lines around, dozer lines around those structures, and that management evaluation point.
Okay, and I have two final questions. First one is, are there concerns for those communities close to the fire line in regards to water contamination? So I will tell you this, there is nobody from the county of Butte here, but tomorrow the Director of County Public Health will be here, and I will have that question either before or by tomorrow night at this press conference. I do want you to know that we did talk about the fact that environmental health did go out to the fire, and they were embedded with some of our damage assessment teams to look at some of the concerns out there. Also, the next question is, what do we do for debris removal? And my encouragement for you on debris removal is, let's wait. County's putting together that plan for the recovery, and as part of the FEMA and the OES portion. So I'm going to turn you back to that website. It's www.disasterassistance.gov, or you can call the 800 number, 1-800-621-3362. And so you're going to do that to start your application process with FEMA, so that way when they're boots on the ground here in the county in a couple days, you'll have that process started. It'll be easier to engage with FEMA. I think that's all the questions we have from our viewers online. I'd like to turn it over to any members of our media that might have any questions here in the room.
Hey, Bob Mulholland, last night was asked about those who were evacuated, where are they going to get their mail?
So that question, immediately after we got that question last night, there was a link that was posted on the Facebook site. And so you can just look on that link, click on that link, and go there. And it thoroughly explained that process. Thank you for asking that question, though. That's a good question. All right. As we have every single night, I'm going to turn you to, if you want to know about any of the major fires that are going on in the state of California right now, we encourage you to go to fire.ca.gov. There's a map of the state of California on there in little tiny flames. Click on the flame that you're interested in knowing more information about, and they actually have all the information about every fire on that website. I also encourage you to go to readyforwildfire.org, and that will teach you how to prepare your family, your friends, and your home in the event of a wildfire happens in your area. And then immediately following this presentation, 10 minutes after, we're going to start a Spanish version of this press conference. Thank you for tuning in, and we will see you tomorrow night at 6:01.